Hi all, this is a lesson on price ceilings from section 2.7, the role of government in microeconomics. We will start with a definition. Price ceilings are a government-imposed maximum price for which a good or service can be sold. Now remember, we're going to need these for, need our definitions for the exam, so make sure you know these. Before we get into why a government might impose a maximum price, we're going to draw the diagram. The diagram is pretty straightforward, but we just need to start out by drawing a regular demand and supply diagram, making sure it is completely labeled, including the curves and the equilibrium price and quantity. So I'll pause while you do that. And this is what you should have done. Beautiful. Now, to make sure we draw the ceiling correctly, we just need to think, what impact would a maximum price above the equilibrium have? That's what it would look like. Is anyone going to care about this? No, no one is charging that price anyway because it's above the equilibrium price. If they were charging above that price, the price mechanism would just bring them down back to the equilibrium. So we can see that to be effective, the price floor must go below the equilibrium price. So this is what it looks like. Here we have a shortage. Quantity demanded is greater than quantity supplied. As we know, this shortage would usually be solved by the price mechanism. Consumers would bid up the price until we go back to EE. With a price ceiling, however, the price tries to rise, but it just butts its head on the ceiling. It can't go any higher. Think of that. Let's look at the effect of a price ceiling on market outcomes. From a free market, we can clearly see that the price is lower. PC lower than PE. What about quantity? We've got two levels here. Once we can see them, yep, QD and QS. Here, QS is the one that really matters because it's how much of the product will actually get made. This is how much is actually available for consumers to purchase. Since QS is less than QE in a free market, the quantity available has decreased. So price and quantity decreased. Now, what consequences can we get from price ceilings? We'll examine the market for rented housing in New York City, where maximum prices have been in place for a long time. Why was this implemented? It was done as a gesture to the lower income people to ensure that they could afford the necessity that is accommodation. Now, I've used a picture from Friends here, which some of you will know, because rent controls were really the only way that these people in the show could afford such a huge apartment right in the middle of New York City, next to Central Park. Now, we know that producers receive a price under the free market equilibrium with a price ceiling. What can this lead to? This can lead to low quality goods. So in this case, low quality accommodation. This price control, this government control, is skewing the market for rented housing. Think about the incentives. Why would a landlord improve his apartments? If he can't make more money in rent, then why would he outlay the money to make improvements? He wouldn't. He would make the repairs and improvements necessary by law or necessary to gain a tenant, but the incentive to do more has really just been taken away. There are other incentives at work here as well. There is the shortage. So many consumers willing to pay above the price ceiling, and landlords, of course, want to receive more than the price ceiling. This can lead to underground or parallel markets. These are markets that operate outside the law. How does this work? The landlords essentially break the law by asking tenants for more rent than is allowed. Or another thing they do is they invent a charge such as a key fee, which is a fee for receiving the key, and they charge thousands of dollars for the key. You can see how this sort of gets around the rent. They're not charging high rent, they're charging for a key. Also, in a free market, the market will clear at the equilibrium price. The price rises or falls to a level such that there is no shortage and no surplus. The price mechanism acts to essentially ration the good or service. With a price ceiling, however, price isn't allowed to ration the good, rental housing. Price is controlled by the government. It has to be, therefore the good, the accommodation, has to be rationed another way. Non-price rationing often takes the form of long queues or waiting lists, which aren't ideal. But a more insidious version is the favoritism that can happen. If everyone is only allowed to offer the same price for the apartment, it makes sense that people would just give them to friends or family or friends of friends. However, it can also lead to different forms of discrimination, perhaps based on race, gender, sexuality, whether they've got kids. It can actually lead to the most vulnerable in society struggling to access the cheaper rent, which really works at cross purposes with the original intent of the policy. Another example of price ceilings is in Venezuela, where ceilings have been put on bread and other necessities to ensure their affordability. Again, we see a shortage, demand, QD is greater than supply, QS at the ceiling price PC. Many suppliers are forced out of business as they can no longer make sufficient profits. The laws of supply and demand combine to make this shortage. Given the skewed market, is the economy now allocating its resources efficiently? Before the price control, more resources were allocated to bread production, as the market sent a signal to producers to make it in the form of a price. Now the price mechanism can't work, so that signal isn't being sent, and we have an inefficient allocation of resources. Again, we will also have low quality products. Why make the bread better if you won't get paid for it? With such a shortage, if it's available, it will sell. So we're not going, it probably won't be as healthy for you, might not be as tasty. Without the price mechanism, again, there has to be another way to ration the good. Here, there is a limit per customer and long lines to wait for bread. This is a typical picture of a bread line. I think this one was taken from Venezuela. Now, we're going to look at the impacts of price ceilings on our key stakeholders. So consumers, some gain in the form of a lower price, but some lose because not everyone is satisfied. So these people will gain because they're getting it for that cheaper price, but then we lose people, just wait for that to disappear, from QE to Q ceiling. They're missing out. Now producers, they lose a lot of welfare. They receive less money per good, right? And they sell a lower quantity as well. And I forgot to talk about workers. All we need to look at when we evaluate the impact on workers is the quantity. Lesser quantity means fewer workers are required to produce it. So that means people are losing jobs. And the government. The government isn't directly affected in terms of expenditure or revenue like they were with taxes or subsidies, but they may, however, face political backlash and in extreme cases need to spend on law enforcement. So this is the president of Venezuela, and these are protesters saying, oh no, there's no bread. And look at all the resources that the government have had to spend on quelling the protest. Okay, that's all we need to know about price ceilings before class. So I hope you've taken some good notes and are ready.